What's happening, guys? Last night I forgot to input some of my food into MyFitnessPal, which happens all the time. I'm notorious for waiting until the end of the night to enter in all of my food into MyFitnessPal. I don't enter it in throughout the day as I'm eating. I just do it in one quick swoop right before bed, which means there are a lot of days that I end up overeating more than I should. So today I want to share with you my process for dealing with those days. Days where I overeat just a little bit, like yesterday where I had 2 servings of pasta. It was like 500 calories more than I should have. And also days where I really indulge and it might be considered a cheat day or a cheat meal. And hopefully my tips in this video are gonna help you stay on track with your diet and keep progressing with your diet, even if you have a day where you overeat a little bit or you overeat a lot. All right, so let's talk scenario number 1 where you overeat just a little bit. I am a perfect example for this scenario because, like I said, last night I had 2 servings of pasta that I didn't put into MyFitnessPal, and that worked out to be about 450 calories. So I was 450 calories over my macro goals because at the end of the night, I had hit my macros perfectly, or so I thought, but as it turns out, I was way over my macro and calorie goal for the day. I didn't realize it until I was laying in bed and I'm thinking to myself, I never put the pasta into MyFitnessPal. I'm way over my macros today. Now, before I get into this, you have to understand that 450 calories for me is actually not a ton of calories because it's actually only about 20% of my total calorie goals for the day right now. And that's not really a huge day of overeating. For me, I think days of really overeating, and we'll get to this in scenario 2, are days where you go 50 or even 100% over your total calorie goal. And I'll give you guys a different plan for handling days like that in a little bit. So like I said, last night I was 450 calories over my total calorie goal for the day. So instead of eating 2,600 calories, I ate about 3,050 calories for the day. My macros right now are 225 grams of protein, 325 grams of carbs, and 50 grams of fat. That's important to keep in mind because I'm gonna show you the changes I'm making today to make up for the 450 calories that I went over last night. So what I like to do when I go over my calories just a little bit, I like to make up for that the very next day. What that means is I'm just gonna make some minor changes to my macros today. So instead of my normal numbers, today I'm gonna hit 225 grams of protein. I'm keeping protein the same, and I'll explain why in a second. I'm gonna hit 225 grams of carbs. That's 100 grams less than my normal goal, and that's 400 calories right there that I'll make up. And then I'm also gonna hit 45 grams of fat instead of 50 grams of fat, and that'll be the other 50 calories. It's 45, but 45 calories, close enough to 50. So by making those small changes to my macros today, I'll actually be at a 450 calorie deficit from my normal goal macros that I've been trying to hit, and that'll offset things from yesterday's 450 calorie surplus. Basically, it'll balance out between the 2 days, and I'll be right where I should be. Now you might have noticed that my changes came specifically from carbs and fats, and that I actually didn't change my protein macro goals at all for when I took myself in this 450 calorie deficit. And there's actually 3 reasons why I like to keep my protein where it's at when I do this. Number 1, protein is extremely satiating. Basically, it keeps you feeling full for an extended period of time. And that's important on a day where you're not eating as much food as you typically do because you actually want to be able to adhere to the lower numbers that you're trying to hit. Number 2 is pretty obvious. Protein has muscle sparing benefits, and when I take myself into a caloric deficit, I try to preserve as much muscle as I possibly can, which is why not only on these days, but in dieting in general, I like to make most of my adjustments from carbs and fats and keep my protein at a pretty consistent level. And my third and final reason for keeping protein where it's at is the thermic effect of food. Protein has the highest thermogenic effect compared to all the other macronutrients. Upwards of 30% of the calories that you eat from protein are actually burned in the digestion process. And that's way higher than carbs and fats. So it just makes sense to keep your protein where it's at so that you're burning more calories by just eating food in general. All right, so now that we got scenario number 1 out of the way, let's talk about scenario number 2, where you really go over your calorie goals for the day by like 50 or even 100%. This isn't like I forgot to put something in MyFitnessPal. This is more like I showed up at Thanksgiving and I was hungry. If I do happen to have one of those days, which doesn't happen very often, I don't try to make up for it in just one day. I'll make my macro adjustments and decreases and I'll spread them out over 2, 3, or even 4 days. And then I get right back on track with my diet and I just start hitting the same numbers that I was hitting before. And honestly guys, when you take those 3 or 4 days to make up for that one awful day of eating, usually you'll be at the same weight you were before, or you might even weigh a little less. It happens all the time for me. Anyways, I want to give you a tangible example of what I would do if I went over my calorie goal by, let's say, 100%. And for this example, we're just gonna create a person and say that their calorie goal was 1,000 calories a day. Just because it's a round number and just because it's easy to work with, I hope that none of you are eating 1,000 calories a day because that's like nothing, but it's an easy number to work with. So for this example, if they overate by 100% of their calorie goal, that would mean that they had 2,000 calories in a day. And let's just say that this person decides they're gonna take the next 4 days to make up that 1,000 calories that they went over their goal by during the day that they binged. That means over the next 4 days, this person's gonna make up 250 calories per day in their diet. Let's also assume that they're following a 40-40-20 breakdown of their macros. So 40% of their calories are coming from protein, 40% from carbs, and 20% from fat. That's 400 calories from protein, 400 calories from carbs, and 200 calories from fat. Like I said earlier, I don't like to make adjustments to protein. So protein is still gonna stay at 400 calories a day. But what I will do is I'll make adjustments to carbs and fats. So to create the 250 calorie deficit that we need to create over the 4 days, what I would do is I decrease my carb calories from 400 calories to 200 and my fat calories from 200 to 150. And boom, you have 250 calories of a deficit that you're creating. And over 4 days, that's 1,000 calories and the person will be back to a balanced number of calories that they should have consumed during the week. So that's just how I like to make up for a day where I go over my calorie goal by a significant percentage. Like I said, a significant percentage for me is like 50% or more. I'll be taking several days to make my adjustments, and that's how I like to make them. And one thing I wanna mention to you guys is that when I make my adjustments, I never bring my fat macros lower than 15% of my total calories. So just keep that in mind when you're making these adjustments. There's just too many things that fats are essential for in the body and are good for, and I don't recommend bringing them lower than 15%. Anyways, I hope this helps you guys devise a plan for dealing with days where you might forget to put something into MyFitnessPal, or even days where you really overindulge and really enjoy yourself. And if you happen to be new to tracking macros and you want to learn the ins and the outs of it, or you just want help developing a weight loss plan of attack, I did write an ebook, Macros Made Easy, that can totally help you with all that. If you want to grab a copy of it, you can get one in the video description below. I just want to thank you guys for all the support. Thanks for watching. I hope you got something out of the video, and I'll see you in the next one.